Big changes are coming to Universal Orlando Resort, and now it looks like Twister may be making a comeback. Hello everybody, welcome. Speculation continues to run rampant with big IPs like Ghostbusters, Jaws, Back to the Future, and now Twister making a return to Universal Studios. Universal finally seems to have figured out that nostalgia keeps their guests coming back time and time again just as much as brand new IPs and attractions in their parks. This blend of new IPs and attractions like Jurassic World and Minions and Trolls, Transformers, and Fast and Furious, as well as Harry Potter, along classic IPs like E.T. the Extraterrestrial, Kong, Ghostbusters, Back to the Future, and Jaws really seems to be working for them. And now we have yet another classic IP possibly returning to their parks in the form of Twister. Not only are these classic IPs continuing to drive excitement and buzz in the parks, they are also driving a lot of online speculation and conversation. These classic IPs really get people excited and talking. And after all, it's been working very well for Disney. Disney's been leaning into nostalgia for decades. In fact, I would say the majority of Disney's theme park model has been truly wrapped around nostalgia. But Disney has also figured out that adding new IPs and new attractions alongside of all these nostalgic classics has been the formula for success. And at Universal, we are seeing more and more examples of this strategy just coming to life and being very effective for them as well. Over the past few years, we've seen a lot of nostalgic and classic IPs starting to make their way back into Universal parks around the world. You take a look at something like Mega Movie Parade, you've got all sorts of classic IPs in there. You've got things like Jurassic Park alongside of some elements of Jurassic World, which are their newer IP version of Jurassic Park. Then you've got things like Minions and Trolls in there, but you've also got Jaws and Back to the Future and Ghostbusters. So it's this combination of bringing all these classic IPs back in alongside of some of the newer IPs. Then you look at something like the sensational water fireworks drone show, which I think is Universal's best, and I think it is the best of all time for Universal when it comes to any sort of nighttime entertainment. This by far and away, I think, exceeds anything, including the water show and fireworks show that exists at Epic Universe today. While great shows, I think Universal's Sensational, quite frankly, blows it out of the water. And it's this combination of things like Jaws and Ghostbusters and Back to the Future, Jurassic Park and E.T. all being part of that sensational fireworks show and drone show. And then you also have things in there as well like Transformers and Harry Potter, again blending all these things together. Now we've got the Universal UK park that they're going to be building that has already been announced. We have concept art for it. They haven't told us exactly what's coming to that park just yet, but based on the concept art, we've been able to make some inferences, and it looks like Back to the Future is going to have its own sort of land. You see a Back to the Future themed roller coaster there. You've got the Hill Valley Courthouse Square there. And then of course you have Jurassic Park, which is then anchoring that, but then there's also this potential Jaws area and or attraction slash show that is sort of right there to the right of once you get into the entrance of UK Resort. And so no confirmation just yet on what that is, but it does very much look like Jaws in the artwork, so Jaws could potentially be coming to that resort as well. In addition, Universal continues to bring Jaws back to their parks, and I did a recent video talking a little bit about some of the rumors and speculation going on about a Jaws attraction actually returning to Universal Studios. I'll link to that below. You should check it out. It's a really interesting video that has a lot of details on what could possibly be happening with the Jaws attraction, and I would be 100% in favor of that. I think it'd be great to bring that back in some sort of modern format. Now we have some new information, some rumors and speculation that's happening around a Twister comeback. specifically as a replacement for Fast and Furious Supercharged. We know that Universal is looking to move really quickly on this Fast and Furious Supercharged replacement. It originally was supposed to close sometime in 2027 and then was moved up to 2026, going to be closing very shortly. So they definitely have plans, something in motion that they are planning to replace this with immediately and as quickly as possible. Speculation has been that it's going to be some sort of overlay onto Fast and Furious Supercharged, not a complete reinvention of the ride vehicle system and the attraction. So utilizing the same queue system, the same pre-show area, same ride vehicles, the same track layout, everything would be basically the same, but a complete overlay on top of that. And this is something they could do very quickly and most likely not cost a lot of money to do this replacement, which also has been leading people to believe that this could potentially be a temporary replacement for maybe a year or a couple of years until they can do something bigger and completely transform the space into a completely different ride vehicle system and attraction altogether. Originally, we've been hearing that Back to the Future was potentially earmarked as a possible replacement for Fast and Furious Supercharged. Now, I personally have not been in favor of a Back to the Future overlay. And this is primarily because I want something bigger and better for Back to the Future. If you're going to bring Back to the Future into Universal, I don't want it to be some cheap overlay of the Fast and Furious Supercharged attraction that I don't like. I think the ride vehicle system, I think the entire thing is flawed from start to finish, and I think overlaying Back to the Future would be a disservice to Back to the Future. I want something new, something fresh, something fun, something enjoyable, and although I do think Back to the Future will probably be a better version of Fast and Furious Supercharged, overall, I feel like it will still end up being kind of a letdown. However, something else we're expecting with this overlay is that they are going to be replacing the screens with these brand new LED screens similar to what we have in Battle with the Ministry. And if you've ridden Battle with the Ministry at Epic Universe, you know that those screens are absolutely phenomenal, and they do a fantastic job of weaving in sort of real world elements and objects and set pieces with these LED screens that almost makes it feel seamless. There are actually points in that experience where I really just can't even tell what's real and what's on the screen. And so if they bring this LED screen technology into the Fast and Furious Supercharged replacement, that could significantly improve the experience, make it better, although still not like dramatically better. It would end up being an improvement. So now we have a new rumor, since Universal hasn't confirmed anything, that it's not actually Back to the Future, it's in fact going to be Twister as a replacement. Now this could be related to the original Twister movie or something related to the new Twisters movie. The original Twister attraction, called Twister Ride It Out, opened on May 4th of 1998. And ironically enough, when it opened, it replaced another classic IP called Ghostbusters Spooktacular, which was a fantastic show for its time. Now, the Twister attraction was based on the original Twister movie starring Bill Paxton and Helen Hunt, which was eventually replaced on November 2nd of 2015, only about 10 years ago, with Race Through New York starring Jimmy Fallon. And that Twister Ride It Out attraction actually was really, really cool. The queue system for that attraction was phenomenal in my opinion. It really gave you like a sense of ominousness that there was a storm coming. They had all this sort of pre-show elements during the queue where Bill Paxton was talking about these tornadoes and this big storm front coming in, and really got you sort of excited and energized to go into the experience itself. And then once you went into the experience, you got to witness sort of almost like a real tornado happening right in front of you. You were under this sort of like awning, sort of protected behind this little like fencing, and you got to experience this tornado sort of ripping this town apart, almost a scene from the original film. And it really was a cool experience, and in my opinion, vastly superior, and I mean vastly superior, it's not even close, to the Jimmy Fallon replacement. Jimmy Fallon replacement, fine, it's an okay ride. Twister, in my opinion, was just better in every way, shape, or form. So it's been over 10 years since Twister has been seen in the Universal parks. It's not even been in the Mega Movie Parade. It's not been in Sensational. But there are a few Easter eggs in the window of the Jimmy Fallon Experience before you go in. But other than that, it really hasn't been part of the Universal theme parks in quite a while. But with this new Twisters movie that just came out, starring Glenn Powell, and I think was a worthy successor to the Twister film, not as good as the original, but it was good enough for me to enjoy it. There's also rumor that there could potentially be a sequel to that Twisters movie. Not confirmed, there's just been rumor that maybe they're going to be thinking about basically a third movie in this franchise. With all of that, it would make sense to think about bringing Twister back into the parks now. And Twister could be super easy to replace Fast and Furious Supercharged. To me, it would also really make a lot of sense because the original attractions that were in the Fast and Furious Supercharged were the Earthquake attraction, which was then later replaced by Disaster. Earthquake ran from 1990 to 2007, and then Disaster opened 2008 and ran until 2015 until it was replaced by Fast and Furious. And I actually really enjoyed those attractions. I know they weren't super popular, but I really enjoyed them because they had a large pre-show experience. I loved the audience participation where you got to be selected and be part of actually filming something. And then you got to sort of like the magic behind making movies. And then you got to actually experience almost like a real life disaster happening around you or an earthquake. And I really found that to be fun. Even the version that had The Rock in it, which was Disaster, The Rock sort of had some like audio and video that played, like a pre-show, and then while you were actually on the sort of like subway tram at the end, you actually got to see like the film come to life. And they would sort of like splice in things that were filmed during the pre-show elements, and I actually got selected at one point to be one of the people in the actual show, and I was in this like ball pit, these like green balls, and I was supposed to be like floundering around, and then when it cut to the actual movie at the end, I was basically like being swept away by water. And I really found that to be awesome, and I always tell people, I said, hey, I actually was in a movie with The Rock. So I've used that line for years now, that like, I was in a movie with The Rock. Did you know that? Because it was such a fun experience, so I just really liked that. And I think bringing Twister to Fast and Furious Supercharged as replacement kind of pays homage to those original Earthquake and Disaster experiences, because Twister tornadoes themselves would be more natural disasters. And it's kind of like bringing that back into that space kind of would be pretty cool. Twister would really be in the same spirit of those original attractions in that building. So the question then really is, what would this experience look like with regards to Twister? There's actually a version of this ride already in existence in a park called Movieland in Italy. Movieland has a history of basically stealing, quote unquote, I mean, I won't say stealing, but like borrowing IPs from other companies and then making them their own. So they put like a subtle twist on it. I honestly don't know how they haven't been, I don't know if people have come after them legally, or if there's really nothing they can do, or nobody really cares about this theme park in Italy. But like they take all these things like Harry Potter and Jaws, Back to the Future. I mean, there's a DeLorean in one of the images that they used for Movieland. Twister, and then they have a ride called Disaster. Like the same exact name for Disaster back in the day at Universal Studios. They basically have a disaster attraction here, very similar. And it's like a tram subway type thing that takes you through some disasters. And in that attraction, it's kind of a combination of like the OG, earthquake and disaster attractions with a Twister like tornado type experience built into it as well. And it actually looks pretty cool. I mean, the screens aren't that great, and I think the animation and video is kind of lame, but like it is kind of a cool experience to where you could see how maybe Universal would do something similar using the actual Twister IP with better graphics, better LED screens. You can imagine all these tornadoes coming around you, high wind happening, cows flying by, maybe being flung up into the air. This could actually end up being a pretty good ride vehicle system for an experience like that. You can imagine the pre-show sort of turning back to something more along the lines of the cue for Twister, with like a Bill Paxton or maybe now like a Glenn Powell sort of talking about the storm that's coming and you're going to go storm chasing and all this sort of stuff. I feel like it could really work well and be a pretty cool experience, worthy successor to Earthquake and Disaster, and quite frankly, a better fit than Back to the Future. Now, there's one other thing that makes this a possibly even more likely to happen, and that is over in Universal Hollywood, they actually have a studio tram tour that you can take, sort of like a backlot tour at the park, where you get to go through all these like scenes and famous areas and see the backstages and stuff of all these movies that have been filmed. And then there are some ride experiences along the way. It's about 30 to 40 some odd minutes for this entire tour from start to finish. And it's got these like smaller versions of some of these popular attractions. There's like a Jaws experience, there's an Earthquake experience, and there is a Kong Skull Island type experience as well. And as part of that tour was a finale, which was basically a copy of what we have Fast and Furious Supercharged in Universal Orlando, except you just stay on that same moving tram. It's like an actual drivable, studio tram it drives into this area, and then you experience all this stuff around you like Fast and Furious Supercharged. And that attraction actually closed in 2025, presumably to make way for Fast and Furious, the new Hollywood Drift, and potentially being turned into something new. And speculation for what is going to be replacing that finale, right now it just sort of circumnavigates it, and that's the end of the tour. There's been rumor that what's going to replace Fast and Furious Supercharged as that finale is a Twister experience, sort of a natural disaster experience. And I think that would make a lot of sense. So if they're going to end up replacing Fast and Furious Supercharged in Hollywood with a Twister experience, it makes complete sense that they would then just use that same thing over in Fast and Furious Supercharged in Universal Studios Orlando. Why not put it in both spots? You've already invested the money, you've probably filmed a pre-show, you've probably filmed all of the scenes and thought about all the special effects. Maybe improve the LED screens, you put it in one place, you put it in two, saves you money, and it's something you can do really quickly. So it makes sense that the date for closing Fast and Furious Supercharged was pushed forward. Now, the Fast and Furious Supercharged replacement also could be some sort of like combined disaster, earthquake / Twister type experience, bringing in multiple variations and things from the disasters, or it could just be Twister. So I personally, if this is true, I would be in favor of this because, again, not in favor of Back to the Future. It's possible they were thinking Back to the Future, but then when they decided on Twister for the one in Hollywood, they were like, why not just port it over? And they got a head start. I don't know. We'll see what we end up getting. Hopefully they announce something soon. I don't think it's going to take long for us to find out because I think this is an overlay. It's going to be something that's going to be stood up really quickly. It's not going to take a lot of time. Universal moves super quick. And so we'll probably find out soon. But I, again, would be in favor of this because I don't want a Back to the Future. I don't want a cheap Back to the Future experience. I want something cooler like what they're doing in the UK resort with a whole roller coaster, a whole hill valley, sort of like Courthouse Square area. Something much more experiential and immersive than just some overlay experience on Fast and Furious. So that's what I got. I'm not sure. Again, it's speculation, rumor at this point, but it does seem to make a lot of sense, hearing a lot about it. I'm curious what your thoughts are. Did you like the original Twister Ride It Out experience? I thought it was cool. I would love to see Twister get brought back into the park, and I think this is kind of a cheap way to do it, but also do it pretty effectively, because I don't know that Twister right now has the legs for some sort of like big experience, but it could be a cool way to maybe bring it back into their parks. I think people have a lot of heart for it. I'd like to know what you think. Be sure to please leave some comments below. Let me know what you think. And once again, thank you so much for watching. Be sure to like, subscribe, and share. Until I see you next time, the noble way is the easy way. Bye-bye, everybody.